Second Kings chapter 6 and 7 tells us an interesting story that took place. It's very applicable to what we're going through with this coronavirus. King Jehoram, he was the son of Ahab, a wicked king of Israel, was walking on his wall during a time of famine. And two women approached him and said, "King, help us." And he said, "How can I help you? I don't have any food." And they said, "Well, the problem was yesterday we decided to kill our children and eat these boys." And the one woman said, "We killed my son yesterday and ate him. And today this woman who agreed to do this has now hidden her son." And when King Jehoram heard this, he tore his robe, and underneath was sackcloth. So he had been in mourning, trying to find out the cause of all this famine that they were experiencing. And he said, Elisha, he's the one that's caused this. So tomorrow he's going to be dead. He's going to have his head taken off. And so the king went down to Elisha's house to confront him for this terrible tragedy that was going on. And of course, Elisha, being a prophet, a man of God, knew that the king was coming. And he said, "Listen," he sent his servant ahead, but the footfalls of his master are right behind him. And when he comes in, grab a hold of him. And they did that. And as the king Jehoram came down to Elisha, Elisha said, "Tomorrow at this time, the famine will be over." And he made a prediction, and the king's right-hand man said, "If God were to open the windows of heaven, could this thing be?" And he said, "You know what? You will see it, but you'll not taste any of God's blessing tomorrow." And that's exactly what happened. Now, as the story goes on, there were 4 leprous men at that time who were, of course, outside the city. And again, we get the idea of the mask. They had to do social distancing back then. They had to put their hand over their face and cry, "Unclean, unclean," and people would avoid them because that type of leprosy was very contagious. And these 4 lepers said, "You know what? If we stay here, we're going to starve to death. If we go in the city, we will starve to death. Why don't we go down and surrender to the Syrians? If they kill us, we will but die. But they might save us." It's interesting. Can you think of a 4-letter word that spells out faith? It's the word risk, R-I-S-K. They say, "You know what? Let's take a little risk. Let's go down to the Syrians and see what happens." Well, they did that. They decided to risk their future. They went down to the Syrians, and when they got to the camp of the Syrians, no one was there. The Syrians had heard a rumor of horses coming, and so they took off. They left everything. They left their tents, their weapons. They took off. So they left all of their food supplies, all of their weapons. They left all of their stores and treasures behind, and they took off back to the land of Syria. And so these lepers, it's almost humorous. You could see them running into each of the tents of the Syrians and coming out with perhaps a drumstick and eating it, and gathering food and valuables, going to the next tent and the next one. And finally, one of them said, "Listen, what we're doing is wrong. This is a day of glad tidings. If we hold our peace, something bad's going to happen. So let's go and tell the city. We know the city's starving there in Samaria. Let's tell the king. Let's let them know that there's food aplenty out here." And as they did that, the king said, No, it's a trap." And someone said, "Well, let's send a couple of our soldiers. We have a few horsemen. Let's send them out and see." And sure enough, the soldiers came back saying, "There is plenty of food. The Syrians are gone. Their camp is deserted." And the king appointed his right-hand man. He said, "Listen, I want you to organize this thing. Go down to the gate of the city and go out in an orderly manner." While the people trampled him to death. They were so hungry. They were starving. They ran out there. And this man who did not believe the word of Elisha was killed as a result. And I want you to think about that. During this time, let's show some faith. Let's do a little risk. Let me give you an example. We support a Filipino missionary who just emailed me the other day saying, we're going through a rough time here in the Philippines because the entire country is shut down. And the problem is there is no unemployment. He said he has personally taken his support money and buying food for people there in his church and in his community to help them through this crisis. So it's interesting. I think God wants us to realize we need to show faith. Yes, we're going through a difficult time, but hey, some of you are working. Use some of your money to help others around you that aren't doing that. It's so important to not just succumb to the state of our country right now with this coronavirus, but to show some faith, to risk a little. And this is a day of glad tidings, and let's share that with a world that needs our help so desperately. May God bless you. Keep looking to the Lord, keep trusting Him, and share that glad tidings with others.